Welcome to You Can Talk to Me, a Beatles podcast. It's time to make our way across the universe and talk all things John, Paul, George and Ringo.
Hi, Michael Croker with you. Thanks for tuning in. You're about to meet Jason Mackey. Now, Jason is someone I first discovered with his terrific Fab Four collector's content regularly featuring on one of his Instagram pages, Beatles of Oz. We connected over Zoom and we found we shared more in common with our love of the Beatles than we'd expected. You might just find the same, particularly if you happen to be a second-generation fan. Either way, you're going to enjoy getting to know Jace here on the You Can Talk to Me podcast. Can we just start by talking a little bit about where people can find you and what the content is across those social platforms?
So my main page, which is the Beatles of Oz, I concentrate mainly on showing my musical side of my collection on that one. So it's albums, they can be vinyl, CD or cassettes. You'll also find DVDs or even the old VHS video cassettes at times. And also laser discs, which I've only recently kind of got into. But that's the main page. And my second page is the Beatles of Oz 2, as in the number 2. And that's the memorabilia side of my collection. So it'll be general memorabilia, old and new, and also books, magazines, and all sorts of crazy odds and ends that I come across, to be honest.
That's fantastic. And I see you're getting interactions from a global community. That must be exciting when you're getting contact from fellow fans around the world.
It really is. Yeah, it's great because for a long while I was collecting, it was really for my own enjoyment, to be honest. And I didn't bother that much with social media back in the day. But when I come onto Instagram, I thought this could be a chance just to share it, which I've always wanted to do. And the response has been overwhelming, really. It's blown me away. But it's great. You know, I'm talking to people from the US and UK, Europe, Brazil, places like that. And yeah, it's great. Really good.
Fantastic. When did the Beatles hit you? Can you remember how they came into your life?
Yeah, it's funny, really, because of all things, it was probably when I was younger. Obviously, and in Australia on the Saturday mornings, I used to show the old Beatles cartoon, the old US cartoon from 1960, from the 60s. And it was really funny because I'd be in bed. My dad would actually be up with one of those old handheld cassette recorders, taping the songs off the cartoons. And I'd hear the songs filtering through to my room as a kid, and I'd get up and they literally drew me in. And then when I saw it was the cartoons, I just loved it. And it really went from there. Like, what a crazy way to start. And it just ballooned a bit from there, and I started listening more. And yeah, that's where it actually started.
It's funny to hear you say that because you're describing my gateway in. I was only a kid. I would have been about 8. Again, I was born in 69, so I'm second generation. And the cartoon would be on in the mornings. I discovered it before school. The songs were amazing. I remember hearing And Your Bird Can Sing. That song just stuck in my head. And I was like,
Wow.
well, what is this? You know, who are these guys? So the cartoon, like for me, I guess, was the gateway. And then I remember being at school and someone brought in like a show and tell day, 1962 to 66 or 63 to 66 in the Red Album.
Yeah.
And we're playing it at school. And I just remember getting lost in the photographs on the front and the back and going, well, who are these? Who are these guys? How did they, are these the same guys on the back that are on the front? It was like opening up a doorway into a whole universe.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can understand that. It's funny because, I was just going to say, it went from there. And the first Beatles album I ever bought, I thought, I've got to buy something. And it was the Australian only release, which was the Beatles Greatest Hits Volume 2, I bought that. That was my first Beatles album. And then a mate of mine actually had the Beatles box, which came out, the world record set from 1980. And that blew me away because I was only listening to the early stuff, which is on Greatest Hits Volume 2. And he's got things from Sgt. Pepper and like Abbey Road. And I thought, is this like you said, the same band? And it opened my world big time. So.
I hear you. My first album was Mum and Dad bought me the Australian release, The Essential Beatles,
Oh
which is
yeah,
like a bit of a scoop up of EPs and B sides, and it's got the oddest track listing.
it
You'd
is.
hear. I'm sure you're very familiar with it. You'd have "Baby, You're
Yes,
a
yeah,
Rich Man" and "Boys" on
yeah.
side one, and I'm hearing that at the age of 9 or whatever, going, I I don't know what I'm listening to because there was no context of the trajectory of the band.
Yeah,
It was all kind
that's
of
right.
lumped in. But that was also what was exciting.
Yes, absolutely. But that's the amazing thing about the Beatles. I mean, you can hear a certain track like something like you said, Boys, and and then you hear A Day in the Life, and you think, how can this be the same band? And the fact that they did it all within 8 years is still absolutely mind blowing. Like, how does a band transition that quick and with that sort of quality in that amount of time? Like, something special happened there, big
Yeah,
time.
absolutely.
But
What bit you for the collecting side of things? Was it once you had that album? Did you then decide, okay, I've got to dig in more, I've got to find more? Because it's not just about the music, is it? There's the visual attraction to the story
yeah,
as well. And so, how do
that's
you go
right.
from vinyl into everything else?
I guess it was definitely the vinyl first off, but also and tragically, it was around the time we lost John, and even though I'd only really just got into him, it still hit hard, and I thought, oh my god, you're like, and I wanted to know more really, and of course, there's a flood of books come out at that time. A lot of them very cheap and nasty and cash in type things as well, but I read some of the better ones and just wanted to know more about them then and find out more, and then but they're just so iconic. Like even the images, of the Beatles, and it just does draw you in. It's an incredible story, and as you know, like any photograph that's ever taken of them, they were so photogenic as well. They're so iconic, and yeah, just so much to the story, and it just went from there. It just visually appealing in a big
Yeah.
way too. I was just going to say, sorry, I've always been a bit of a collector anyway, so
Yeah.
I'm into other things besides the Beatles, amazingly.
Right.
But so yeah, it's very easy to get the bug and just start collecting them.
It's funny you say it. When John was murdered in 1980, my fandom was just beginning, and that really rocked me. I remember Dad had to pick me
Yeah,
up from school because I
same.
was
Yeah,
in tears. It really affected me. The very first magazine I got, which started my collecting, was a tribute magazine from the Sunday Times, which still stands, I think, as one of the better John Lennon tribute books that came out at the time, or magazines.
yeah,
And it's just rich and really beautiful visual images and just well produced. And that, I guess, to your point, out of that tragedy, pre-digital age, there was suddenly a torrent of content. Because up until then, it was very difficult to find things. I'd be
that's
cutting
right.
out newspaper clippings or articles,
Yeah,
and
same.
you couldn't
Absolutely.
couldn't find content. And then
No,
suddenly, with John gone, there's all these photographs, and then there's books, and
yeah.
and I was swallowing it all up. What was that pre-digital age like for you as a collector? How did you go about finding things?
Well, it's funny because I preferred it. I still do, to tell you the truth. Like I'd always scour the secondhand book and record stores, and especially I'd go to Sydney back in the day, and I'd spend a whole day there. I'd catch the train up, and I'd walk along the whole length of Pitt Street, which had a heap of secondhand book and record stores back in the day. Fantastic, like Christmas for a collector. And George Street as well. There's still a couple of good stores, but most of them are gone now. But it was just going to those and digging deep though. That's the secret. Like a lot of people won't bother going to the bottom of a pile of magazines or going for the things that are in the back. You think, oh, I'm not going to pull all that out and look in there, but I do. That's because I know people don't.
Love it.
So that's my trick. I go to the spots that people won't bother looking in, and that's where I find a lot of this stuff.
I'm
But
sure there's
yeah,
there's a lifetime of collecting there for you. Are there a couple of pieces, whether it's books, whether it's vinyl? Is there a piece that just stands out for you as one of the ones you're the most proudest of, and does it have a story of discovery around it?
it'll always be, I guess, the very first album because it really literally started it. So, like I said, it was the Beatles' greatest hits, Volume 2. There's also obviously a Volume 1, but I bizarrely found the second one first, but so that's pretty special. But I've also got a large oil painting of the Beatles, which an uncle of mine gave to me on my 18th birthday, and one of his mates painted it, and it's obviously a one-off, and it's
Huh.
really cool. Like, so that's a nice one. So, but it's hard to pick anything in particular, to be honest. There's that many things that I do enjoy out of it. But I think out of anything, the vinyl is my favourite. Like the vinyl in general, that's my favourite out of anything in the collection. So, and I love just finding the obscure things. So that'll be my favourite things, I guess. It's a bit hard to single out something in particular.
Like picking a favourite child.
Yeah, absolutely.
The very first bootleg I ever got was Strawberry Fields Forever. And I remember I picked it up at a second-hand vinyl store in Townsville in North Queensland and had this beautiful kind of psychedelic oil background on the front image, and then a still from Hello Goodbye promo inside a
Oh yeah,
television set.
I know
And
which one you mean. Yeah,
yeah, it's just beautifully packaged. And that was the first time I was ever able to hear unreleased demos. Do you have
hmm
a story that's similar about maybe the first time you discovered that world of bootlegs before we got anthologies and everything else?
absolutely. Like I said, when I used to go to Sydney back in the day, there was a record store up there called Phantom Records, which was just awesome. Like it had a lot of indie stuff, and there was always a bit different, than your mainstream record store. And they had bootlegs, which I had no idea about. I didn't even know they existed at that point. Like I was still trying to get together the base set of Beatles albums, and I walked in there, and they had like this rack of bootlegs. And I remember one of the first ones I saw was the Black Album,
Yeah.
which is the alternate version, literally, of the White Album. And I still want to get that original. I've got a different version of it, which I posted on Instagram not too long ago. But the original is literally the double album, but black, and it's got a poster and everything. It's even got 4 different portraits of the Beatles. But when I saw the track listing, I thought, what on earth is this? Like, what am I looking at here? What are these songs? These obscure song titles. And I thought, how? Like, and where from? And yeah. And then I was looking at all these other bootlegs too, and I thought, what the hell?
Yeah.
It really was another world. And I love bootlegs personally.
Well, it
You
was
know,
interesting because some of the packaging, when it's done right, some of the packaging would be more impressive than the stuff at the time that was coming out from Capitol. Like that Black Album
absolutely.
packaging is exceptional.
Yeah,
And yeah, some could be a little hokey, but there were also some that were just stunning to look at as pieces of art before you even got into
absolutely.
the listen.
That's right. Yeah. And in this day and age now, they're next level. Like I only mentioned this morning because I posted this morning one that I picked up recently. It's called Love, the album, but they've got hold now of the Beatles tracks from the early 60s, which Apple has done nothing with. And they're letting it all slip through their fingers. These bootlegs are putting out brilliant, beautifully coloured vinyl type albums and things with these tracks of live performances from TV and studio tracks, which we might get one day, but they're doing all this now, and Apple should have jumped on this. And
Mm.
yeah, it's some pretty impressive bootlegs around these days.
There's a big leadership change happening at the time of us recording this at Apple with a change out of the CEO, I think. So that may
Oh,
mean
really?
that there could be a bit of a fresh approach to all of that
Wow.
content.
I wasn't aware of that, to be honest.
Yeah, so we'll wait and see. Uh, when you recently, I've seen, have embraced the world of AI, just to sort of jump rails for a minute, and you've been developing some some stunning AI content based on lyrics. What drew you to that sidebar to everything else you were doing? How did you get captivated with that?
Well, I actually draw myself. Like, I wouldn't call myself a full blown artist, but I've drawn quite a few images of the Beatles myself over times. I love art in general. I always have loved art, like big time. So when this come along, it was really just another variation of art, and I thought, wow, like it's kind of it blew me away. And I don't think they're as good as they can be. There's better AI tools you can use than the one I am, but it's just fun. It's a bit of fun, really. Like and there's, as you'd be aware yourself, there's a couple of Beatles books which are based on their lyrics, which they're by Alan Aldridge, actually the best ones, and they have a visual, artistic side to the lyrics, and I love those books. They're personal favourites, really. And it's just something I was thinking about, and because you can produce so quick, literally in seconds, the AI. I mean, a lot of people hate it. I understand that and bag it and all that. But I don't care. It's just a bit of fun, If you don't like it, don't look at it.
Yeah, there you go. That's perfect.
It's as simple as that. But it's just a bit of fun, mate. And some turn out good, and other ones I think are a bit dodgy. But anyway, it's a bit of fun.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I wouldn't have made that connection, but you're right. The Alan Aldridge stuff was very much in that space of visual reinterpretation of lyrics. And I found those books when I was a young guy, they were captivating too. And you would get lost. I still remember that image of the cover art and the Cry Baby Cry graphic.
Yeah.
And there was just a real beauty in that art
fantastic.
itself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that sort of thing. And it's funny, I only posted a bootleg the other day. You might have even seen it, which has got that Cry Baby Cry image on the front of the bootleg. But that's brilliant art. Really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, it's always appealed to me.
Timeless stuff. When people are getting into the world of collecting, and particularly when they're trying to negotiate with international collecting and bringing pieces in, are there things to be aware of? Are there challenges there? And what's been your experience as a serious collector? Because I know that you don't only just jump online; you'll physically travel to places like you described, and you'll get your hands in there. But if someone was getting into that world of collecting, are there pitfalls to be aware of?
There definitely is. I find in particular, buying from America, I very rarely buy from the US because the shipping is ridiculous. Like the cost of shipping is a lot of the time as much as the item you're buying or more, really. It's crazy, like madness. So, it's up to the individual. But one of the things I find a little bit frustrating is like the Beatles US store in particular, like the official store, and there's also a Japanese one and a UK one. The US and Japanese stores, they won't ship to Australia. Like, I find that incredibly frustrating. And we always get handballed to an alternative website, which is called The Sound of Vinyl in Australia, which is a fine website. They sell great records and things, but there's no memorabilia at all, like nothing.
Right.
And I've really made a point of trying to ram this home a bit to the US store, and that I can't buy your product because you won't ship to Australia, and that is frustrating. So, but sorry, I've gone a bit off track, but
Not at all.
But I generally I scour eBay. Like I'll just go through, and you got to set yourself a limit too of what you want to spend, because with the internet you can obviously go crazy. So you've got to set your limit. And I added a lot of things to my watch list, which I think possibly I'll pick up over time. Amazon I'll check out as well, because they can have some really good specials at times. It's just about keeping an eye on things, just watching things and compare prices. Just don't jump in straight away as well, So yeah, it's about shopping around. But like I said it before, on the physical side, just dig deep. That's always been a big one of mine. Get in there where people won't look, because that's where the things are.
Yes, it's fantastic.
That's where you'll find them. Yeah.
If fellow collectors wanted to extend their network and their community of Beatle contacts who are living in that world, they can find you and reach out to you via Instagram?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm willing to talk about it. I enjoy it. So, and I'm still learning about things as well and discovering things. So, no, that's fine. Yeah.
And do you mind just giving us again your handles on Instagram where people can find you and make a connection?
Yep. So the main one is at the Beatles of Oz. So that's OZ on the end. That's the main page, which is, like I said, all my musical content. The second one is at the Beatles of Oz 2, which is the number 2. And that's all the memorabilia and books and odds and ends. So they're my main ones. I do have a third account, actually, which is Jace of Oz, which is my other side. It's the non-Beatles things.
That's great.
I don't post on there as often, but I'm starting to get into it a bit more and putting up the other musical side of my life and just odds and ends, photos and things. But anyway.
No, I love your
when I get
content.
around to it.
And that's one of the reasons I wanted to reach out to you, because I see so much of my own life memories come back through seeing the things that you're
Oh,
posting.
thank you.
And then I
Thanks so
see
much for
things I wish I had, and think, oh, that would be a beautiful piece. I should hunt that down. I always ask this question, Jace. I know it can change on any given day depending on your mood or where you are, but I'm just curious, if you had to call it, what album do you go back to again and again and never seem to tire of? I know that you could say that for all of them, but is there just one that if you had to say, yeah, you know what, it's this one? What album do you go
Yeah,
back to?
it's got to be the White Album for me. Like it's an incredible album. I mean, they all are, but you know, no matter what your musical style or taste, you'd be pretty picky if you didn't find your style on that album. I mean, it's just mind blowing. Over 2 discs, you've got everything on there, as you know. Like you know, it ranges from country to even metal with heavy Helter Skelter to beautiful ballads, incredible ballads. You know, and the avant-garde Revolution 9. Where on earth are you going to hear anything like that on any other album? I love, and I don't mind it actually. You know,
Yeah,
a lot of people say, "Oh, what's this rubbish?" But I think it's actually incredible,
I do too. And it's
incredible.
funny, I ask this question of everybody, and what's slowly coming through so far is Revolver again and again and again, which I
Yeah,
love.
yeah.
But my answer to that same question that I've asked you is the White Album, for all the reasons you've
Oh,
said.
really?
Yeah, I go
Cool.
back to it easily again and again, and I think there's more greatness in there than is often appreciated, because it's so
Yeah,
sprawling and there's so much content. The fact that they followed Pepper with that still blows me away. They were just endlessly impressive, weren't they?
oh, incredible. I mean, it really is. It's mind blowing. How on earth can you change style like that, but be with such quality though?
Yes,
It's incredible. In 8 years, like you can't fathom it, to tell you the truth. And it's funny because at the moment I'm reading the Mark Lewison book, Tune In, the extended edition, and I've only got through the first book of volume 1 so far, but that's blowing my mind too. And I highly recommend, if I can say anything at all, if you're just starting to get into the Beatles, before you read any of the other books, biographies, or anything, this should be your starting point, because will tell you exactly what they went through before they hit the big time, and it is a great read.
yeah,
And it's making me look at them in a whole different way, because you know the personalities of them more than
yes.
what you just see as an overview in other books.
Well
So
said.
that's a big tip, if I can give any at all. Start with that. It makes you realise how hard they worked before they even hit the big time, and then it makes a bit more sense to why they were how good they were, because of
Yes.
what they did beforehand.
And
Yeah,
probably also why they burned so bright for only the time that they did, because that lead up, there was so much grind and so much work that
absolutely.
they're almost
Yeah.
like a comet. It was there and then it was done, and we're still talking about the trail that they left behind.
Well put, mate. Absolutely incredible.
And good luck with continued hunting.
Welcome. You're very welcome, mate, and thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it, and all the best to you too. Keep at it, mate, and your man cave looks great.
Thanks, buddy.
We hope you enjoyed the show. You know the name, look up the socials. You'll find us on Facebook and Instagram, where we can all come together. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe and spread the word. It all helps raise the profile of the You Can Talk to Me podcast. Thanks for listening.